They sprayed him in the face while the officers were still checking my ID right there on Maple Ridge, in front of the mailboxes, like it was some petty public performance. My dog yelped, my knees hit pavement, and for a minute I forgot how to breathe. That's how it started. One small, stupid noise, and everything we thought was normal got pulled out from under us. My name's Thomas Hale. I wanted a quiet life, a morning coffee on the porch, a dog who could sit through a thunderstorm without losing her mind. I got Willow because she's steady, because she reads people, because she kept the old panic storms from swallowing me whole. People knew Willow the mailman. The neighbor kids, she made the street feel softer. But this neighborhood had rules that became tools. Rules that began as keep things tidy and turned into a way for one person to run a small kingdom. Her name was Marla Vance, and she had a talent. She could make neighbors feel like they were always on the clock. Her smile said community. Her actions said control. On a Tuesday that smelled like rain, a delivery truck backfired, and Willow barked one quick sound, protective and brief. Marla heard it, saw a chance, and called 911. By the time the squad car rolled in, she'd already spun a story. Dangerous dog. My son was scared. I tried to explain service animal. Trained. Helps me, but the tidy story fit better than the messy truth. While an officer was writing my name, Marla leaned close and, I still see it, produced a small canister and sprayed Willow in the face. The dog yelped and the officers, who'd been ready to listen, found reasons to write things down. Marla's voice was soft. He's aggressive. No one asked where the son was, who actually saw it. The allegation stuck, and an emergency quarantine order appeared on my door that night, 48 hours to prove Willow wasn't a hazard or they could seize her. There are two ways to face it: back down or fight. I won't pretend I was noble, I was scared. But fear makes a person move in ways they aren't used to. My first move was to gather proof. I knocked on doors, waved my phone, and most people clucked and closed. Some wanted comfort over confrontation. Ray, a retired electrician down the block, stepped out with grainy porch cam footage that showed Marla's hand, the canister flash. Willow startled. I called Marcus and Lena. Marcus can pull files from routers like a locksmith. Lena reads HOA minutes like other people read novels. Marcus found an email chain where Marla pushed for stricter animal rules. Lena found invoices for security consults that felt overblown for our little community. Motive wasn't a fairy tale villain. It was power. If you write the rules, you make the consequences. 48 hours narrows your world to a calendar of urgent tasks. I filled forms, photographed Willow's vest and certifications, uploaded Ray's footage, and kept calling. Marla, meanwhile, painted the neighborhood portrait she wanted people to believe. Time felt like a tide. You hunched against it, or you drowned. We made a plan. Marcus set up a live stream for the emergency HOA session. Lena drafted a short timeline of Marla's interventions, and Sarah, a neighbor who'd been both friend and ally to Marla, agreed to bring the receipts she'd been hoarding like ammunition. Sarah's hands shook when she knocked on my door. I don't want trouble, she whispered, but I don't want this to be what we're known for. She was terrified, and that terrified me. Speaking up changes a person's life in a small town. I promised to keep her name safe until she was ready. The night before the meeting, someone cut our power. It felt like a threat with a cheap edge. Marcus showed up with battery packs and a grin that tried to be brave and mostly failed. We'll stream it from my van if we have to, he said, and I believed him because he always believed in ridiculous plans until they worked. Willow slept under the dining table as if to remind me that life keeps being ordinary even when everything else is not. At the meeting, the clubhouse hummed with small-town tension. Marla opened with her practiced calm, a stack of printed statements like a lawyer's brief. She read them slowly, and the words were designed to land: public hazard, liability, community standards. Then Sarah stood. Her voice cut through the room like a thread pulled from a sweater, small at first, then impossible to ignore as she read texts and emails showing Marla's nudges about fines and how to teach people a lesson. Marcus made his laptop feed public, and neighbors across town clicked in. When Marla heard the phone light go on, she changed tactics. Her smile sharpened. "You're spreading lies," she said to me, voice thin with practiced hurt. "You want attention." I felt anger like heat, not violent, not cinematic, but hot and exact. I said, "I want my dog back." It was not a line that won an Oscar, but it landed. People were listening. Someone in the back, Mrs. Ortega, who had more tomatoes in her yard than anyone thought permissible, stood up and told her story about a fine for a vine that had crossed a property line. Another neighbor talked about being denied volunteer hours because they'd questioned a petty fee. That pile of tiny grievances stacked up into something heavier, a pattern of petty enforcement, cloaked as order. Marla did the predictable thing. She lashed out, accused Sarah of betrayal, accused me of incitement. She tried to make fear return to the room. Instead, something else happened. People remembered being human to one another. They remembered potlucks and block parties and the fact that most of them had moved here because it felt like a place that could hold people. A few votes later, the board voted to pause the emergency order. Animal Control reopened the file after seeing Ray's footage and Marcus' chain of messages. Confronted with evidence, the narrative unraveled. Marla resigned a week later. She packed her papers and left like someone whose small kingdom had quietly dissolved. There were no dramatic scenes, no courthouse fireworks, just the slow bookkeeping of consequences. That quiet made it worse, in some ways. Power fractures not always with a bang, but with the sound of neighbors finally refusing to buy the script. Willow came home the afternoon the quarantine lifted. She shook herself like she'd been in a summer storm, and then nosed my face like she was checking if the world was still ours. I cried then, sudden and ridiculous and utterly true. We sewed a tiny patch on her vest a month later that said Community Ally. I meant it as a joke and a thank you and a kind of promise. I'm not pretending this was a tidy moral victory. I kept losing sleep for months, and a few people still walked their yards with a little extra caution when I passed. Some neighbors defended Marla. They'd seen her at bake sales and at meetings and couldn't believe she'd behave like that. That's how power works. You can do harm dressed as care and leave people confused about which is which. If you want to know what happened after the boxes were packed, there were quiet hearings and a new review of HOA policies, and a few neighbors formed a small oversight group to keep tabs on transparency and awkward compromise, but one that made it harder for any single person to turn rules into a personal lever. It's messy, it's slow, and it's human, but that's the point. So I'll leave you with this. It takes courage to be inconveniently human. Silence can feel safe, but it can also be a way to let wrong things keep rolling. What would you have done? Would you stand in a nylon chair and read messages aloud? Or would you send the quiet email and hope for the best? When does stewardship become domination? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this with a neighbor who's ever felt bullied by a system that looks like help, and tell us a story. We'll read them, and maybe, just maybe, we'll remember to be a little braver next time. If this moved you, hit share, leave a comment, tell us what you would have done. And if you're dealing with a neighborhood fight right now, say so. Sometimes the smallest truth shared out loud is the thing that starts a change.